Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. Watch the NFL's biggest stars play in the most exciting matchups all season long. With Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, and the best broadcast team delivering all you need to know to kick off your NFL weekend. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game. Thursday Night Football. It's on Prime. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
This is brought to you by AT&T. AT&T believes connecting changes everything. I'm Jay Shetty, and on my podcast, On Purpose, I've had the honor to sit down with some of the most incredible hearts and minds on the planet. On this podcast, you get to hear the real-life stories behind their journeys and the tools they used, the books they read, and the people that made a difference in their lives so that they can make a difference in ours. Listen to On Purpose with Jay Shetty on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join the journey soon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome in. Wednesday, September 12th, the first ever in-season Dynasty podcast, guys. We're here. I'm joined by Jason Moore and Matthew Betz.
What up? Can't believe it, man. Who would have thought we'd make it in season? They thought they would cancel us before we got here, but no, baby, we're not going away.
They said it couldn't happen. They said there was nothing to talk about, right? Like, oh, it's just Dynasty. We have a ton to talk about. And the best part is the NFL, for better or for worse, kind of writes itself. And I was thinking about this earlier today. And Jason, you know, you're a businessman. You run some business. But like, how awesome is it to run a business around something that basically just all the time has something to talk about?
Oh, it is a delight. I mean, the nice thing is, you know, I've as you said, I've had some businesses in the past. My first large-scale business was centered around MySpace. If some of our listening audience can remember what that is, and that didn't go so well for the long term. They folded, and then eventually Facebook Gaming was huge. Had a big company there. That's actually where the ballers all met. We all worked together for a good decade, and Facebook Gaming went away. But the NFL, the NFL is celebrating over 100 years, and they're doing just fine. We went down to the NFL studios, their new headquarters a couple weeks ago to celebrate this podcast and the inclusion, as part of the NFL network of podcasts. And they are doing all right. I can firsthand, I can tell you right now, the NFL, they are a good, well-oiled machine.
I think that Thursday night game, wasn't it up 26% compared to last year in terms of viewers in week one against, it was the Chiefs and Lions? That was insane, that number that came out, that stat. Yeah, the NFL is here to stay.
It's funny because it's not static, it's not boring, even if there's teams that, you know, people that they didn't just like, okay, well, it's just the Cowboys, that's the famous team, there's the Steelers, Patriots. It's like, no, every single team has a storyline. Even the Cardinals, it's like, oh, their storyline is, what are they running out there? And what are they going for next year? There's just so much. It writes itself. And so, Jason, all it took is for you to figure out over the years to just attach yourself to a behemoth, and we're going to ride this thing, Dynasty style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. We want to ride it, and we want to ride it hard. And so that's what we're going to do. Thank you.
That's
God, I can't even talk right now.
That's exactly, in our pre-show planning, that was our main point to bring up. So I'm glad that I got to bring it up.
It was that and MySpace. Those were the two top priorities on the show.
I bet you do some searches, you can find some good stuff with MySpace and Jason Moore's name attached to it. But in season for the Dynasty podcast, people, we will be recapping and then talking about some of the top storylines. For the first week, we will be talking about overreactions. And it's easy to kind of just give a short-term view of, okay, here's what happened, here's how we adjust. We're also giving the long-term outlook of how you can trade players, their values, like, hey, is this player something that I could trade right now? Or do I need to wait it out? And we're going to talk about some of those players. So you can stick with us all throughout the season. We're going to be talking about dynasty value and dynasty players, but I wanted to start us off with some bench boys, okay?
Bench boys.
Bench boys. I want to talk about a player that was on your dynasty bench, because I know that they were out there for people that when you saw them, you're like, this is awesome. They counted no points for my team, but their value is going up. So this isn't a nasty boy anymore. This is a bench boy. This is a level up. So Jason, give me somebody that was on your dynasty bench that from week 1 to week 2 is already ascended in value.
Yeah, so I took this very serious. I went and I looked at my main dynasty leagues and I said, who that is sitting on my personal bench looks like they are much better off, and is a player who got a lot of buzz in the preseason and in training camp. But it's a player I think could still even qualify as a nasty boy because not a lot of people know of this guy. It is the second-year wide receiver playing his first season in the NFL because he missed his entire rookie year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Calvin Austin, second-year wide receiver for the Steelers. He is a little bitty baby boy. I believe he's 5'8", 170, small guy, but lightning fast. I mean, we're talking 4.32 speed. He is also a good wide receiver. A lot of times you got speedy guys. You know, you got your Tyquan Thorntons that they can blaze, but you're not 100% sure that they're a good wide receiver. Calvin Austin was a good wide receiver. His last 2 years in Memphis, he combined for 2,300 yards, almost 20 touchdowns. Really talented wide receiver, and had a lot of buzz through training camp. Training camp was talking about how he was making plays all the time. Then you go into preseason and you saw some handoffs, some deep shots, looked good. Well, now, week 1, the putrid, not great, but the putrid offense we saw from the Pittsburgh Steelers against an awesome 49ers defense, it wasn't great, but here was Calvin Austin playing 56% of the snaps already in that week. He received 6 targets. He broke 3 tackles, and now you have Deontay Johnson, who is probably going to miss several weeks with a new hamstring injury. And, there's certain here's a dynasty tip that I personally try to follow, and it's why I have Calvin Austin on my roster. I held on to him all through last year. Certain teams are good at drafting certain types of players. They just are. You want to know who's going to be a good defensive player, just go look at whoever Baltimore drafts. And some of that is not just because of their scouting and their ability to identify the traits that work for certain positions. That's part of it. But some of it is they also have a system in place to train up these new players. They know how to get the most out of them. Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, you talk about drafting good wide receivers. You can go way back, but even if you just go back to Antonio Brown, they draft Deontay Johnson. Chase Claypool looked good when he was on their team. You got George Pickens, who's been great. Yeah, Juju was an awesome player until his knee injury. And so they've got Calvin Austin, who they, held on to through his missed rookie year. I think he gets on the field more and more, and I think he is a really important part of this offense. Because when you think about the Steelers, you think about dink and dunk and short and inefficient and garbage and awful and et cetera, et cetera. This version of the Pittsburgh Steelers there's just no explosiveness. There is one super explosive player, and it's Calvin Austin. Well, there's 2, Jaylen Warren, but he's in the backfield. Calvin Austin will be out wide, stretching the field. He will have some bomb touchdowns, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I don't expect him to level up to the tune of, a dominant fantasy asset, but I think he can really develop into a player that is someone that you want to throw into lineups for big explosive production where, he'll have volatility, but when you're in dynasty leagues, and you're starting, a lot of dynasty rosters, you're talking 3 wide receiver, maybe 2 flex, you're going deep, and there's not players that are deep that I think are going to have the individual game upside of Calvin Austin if he develops, because keep in mind, this is really his rookie season as an NFL player.
He's just so different too than Pickens and Allen Robinson in terms of creating separation. Like that's just a different skill set as a whole. I think we would say like George Pickens, the ceiling is way higher, but at the end of the day, like Calvin Austin could like week to week lead this team in targets, like in short area targets. They might not be as valuable, but he can also hit one deep. Like he's just different than what they have. So I love the pick, Jason, because he's somebody that hasn't been on my radar. I don't have him in any leagues. So it's kind of nice to say, like, I don't know, in a full PPR, like he can be a flex for you.
What's crazy is Calvin Austin is probably on some dynasty waiver wires. Like we're talking about a guy who was already on your bench who's leveling up. You should, if you're playing in any dynasty leagues, which you're listening to the Dynasty podcast, I would imagine you play in dynasty leagues. Go check your waiver wires right now for Calvin Austin. He wasn't high enough draft capital to keep in all formats last year, so you could add him to your roster now.
Betz, why don't you go next with one of the true GOATs?
According to Arthur Smith, this guy is the GOAT. I am talking about Tyler Algier. Now, you mentioned these guys kind of like came out of nowhere week one. Tyler Algier had a great rookie season, set the franchise record for rookie rushing yards, right? He was great last year, over 1,000 yards. But as soon as they drafted Bijan Robinson, you thought, this guy's done. He's just on my bench. He has no trade value. Like maybe Bijan gets hurt and you can play him. But the usage in week one says maybe we have a guy that you can play as a flex every single week, even when Bijan is healthy. I mean, look at the usage this week. Bijan, of course, played more snaps, ran more routes, but Tyler Algier had 18 opportunities to Bijan's 16. And then more importantly, carries inside the 5-yard line. Tyler Algier 3, Bijan 0. Now, does that stick the entire season? Probably not, right? And I don't think the Falcons are going to win every game by 2 or 3 scores. But Arthur Smith does not care about us in fantasy. He wants to run the ball. And so whenever the Falcons do have a projected positive game script, I think Tyler Algier is totally startable, redraft dynasty leagues. And you thought, when they took Bijan 8th overall, you thought he was done.
I'm in a super flex league where my team is pretty bad. Okay. Like I don't even have a second starting quarterback. Okay. Because of injuries, I have Kyler and this team's kind of been rebuilding and I've acquired picks. So I was forced to start Tyler Algier in my super flex spot.
Man.
That's hilarious.
And of course I won. So, if you're ever in the rebuilding mode and you win, you go like, oh, this is good, right? So anyway, Tyler Algier, we'll talk more about the Falcons later because I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from a team perspective is Algier, Bijan, what do you do with the passing offense? I know, Jason, you have a lot of thoughts. And
we'll get to that.
And did you say you think they're going to win the division?
I did. I am officially on record saying that I believe they will win the division.
I'll take it. I'm going to throw out Puka Nacua.
Yes, this is the number one. Like, this is the answer to the question. You just got into the doc first.
That's true. And also he's on my bench. So in the main Ballers Dynasty League, Jeremy and I picked him up way, right after the rookie draft and just been
before
sitting on
cool.
it. Apparently, but we didn't know it was going to happen. This is my favorite nickname from Monday's show. Like by far. Like Puka Nacua Cup Jr. is
yes.
That's a pretty good one.
Such a great nickname. We brought his name up earlier this summer after the draft. It was in early May in our Take It or Leave It segment where we just throw out a thought. And all we were simply saying is, I don't know what he is. He was a target earner at BYU. And Sean McVay is one of those players that can scheme players open. So 40% targets per route run is nuts in week one. That if you were to hit a number like that, I mean, the best in the league, Tyreek Hill, they're hitting just above 30 throughout the season. So 40% week one is nuts, 15 targets. I don't think he's going away. And obviously he was a big talking point today on the main show when we talk about redraft. But what do you guys think about Puka as in week 2 against the 49ers and then the rest of season? I know we still have so many questions about Cooper Kupp when he returns, but I mean, what are your thoughts on his staying power, Jason, rest of the season?
Yeah, so let's actually look at it longer than that because this is a dynasty show and Cooper Kupp is long in the tooth. Maybe he gets healthy this year. Maybe he gets back and dominates. Maybe he dominates again next year. There's also the world where he doesn't get back ever again to Cooper Kupp full strength, where he comes back and it takes him 6 weeks to get back, and then he re-aggravates it again. And, all of a sudden, now it's a nightmare. There's also the truth that he is now tied to Sean McVay. And Sean McVay committed to this team again this last offseason, and I believe Sean McVay is going to want to prove that he can do it again with the Rams. Puka is a talented player. This is pre-NFL draft. Puka was a wide receiver that I really liked. I thought for all of the, you go by like consensus draft experts, big boards in the pre-NFL draft time, because I'm not a college guy. So I just go down and I, go top to bottom. So we're starting scouting JSN and Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers and those type of players. And Puka was one of the last guys I scouted. He wasn't super highly touted, but I remember thinking like, dude, this guy's good. And in a draft class full of baby boys, this is like a man out there. So I really, really liked him. Then he goes to Sean McVay. So his long-term future, when you come out and you can go 10 for 15 in week 1 as a rookie in the NFL, it's not a fluke. It's not an accident. He's good. I believe in him. I would push chips in on him having a good, decent future ahead. Now, specifically the next couple weeks, 49ers are going to be tough. They just destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see if Sean McVay can do a little bit more in division. I will say that the 49ers usually have the Rams number. I mean, like they I don't have any stats in front of me. This is anecdotal in my brain. Maybe you can look this up, but I am pretty sure that the 49ers and Shanahan own Sean McVay. They have made a deal where he can't compete with them. So I do worry about this week. Obviously, going forward, I worry about when Cooper Kupp comes back, whether Puka will be in 2 wide receiver sets or whether that will be Van Jefferson. I think Van Jefferson is a really good NFL 3. So I hope Puka develops his way into wide receiver 2, but in a dynasty format, I am 100% in on Puka.
Yeah, I looked up the stat. Sean McVay is 3-8 against Kyle Shanahan. So,
and usually it's a whooping. Like the 49ers, they bend Sean McVay over their knee, and they count his birthday off right on his backside.
Before we move on, I was going to ask you guys, what would, like, if you're obviously bullish on Puka Nacua, you were before the draft, Jason and Kyle, feel free to jump in. What would you give up in a trade to go get him? Like if we're talking rookie picks for next year.
I think I'd be happy to give up a second-round rookie pick for him. You've seen a little flash, and you can't wait too long for that to happen. Second-round rookie picks are at best a 50% shot at happening. What you hope you get in the second round, what you dream of getting in the second round, is a player who week 1 can go out there and go 10 for 15. And then if you trade that pick that could develop into nothing, it could just be a bust. Not only could it be a bust, but at best, if it hits, it's a year away because you're trading a 2024 pick. So I would absolutely go off for a 2023 for Puka in all leagues. I don't know that you'll be able to get that done right now because it's hard. Maybe you do that in another week after, the Shanahan spanks McVay.
As a resident Puka pal, someone that has him on the team, I think it's just a hold. Like there's just like a second wouldn't get it done. And I think Jason's right. Like that's where you start the negotiation, but you would probably want to say, hey, I just want to see where this goes, especially with Kupp's injury up in the air. So he's one of those players that you got him for nothing. And so right now you can try to flip that and maybe that does work, but it's so early in the process that there's not a need. Like you don't have to turn around. Now, Jeremy and I are trying to, as best we can, lose again this year, but we can't. We won again in week 1. So who knows? We're bad at trying to lose. That's like where the dynasty process is just broken down for us. So whatever. Puka Nacua is a great player. We'll be talking about him hopefully more and more throughout the season. But if you got a bench boy, someone that went off on your bench, send us a screenshot because I just want to see some of the names that just went bananas for teams this week that were just sitting out there on the wire or on your bench. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. Watch the NFL's biggest stars play in the most exciting matchups all season long. With Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, and the best broadcast team delivering all you need to know to kick off your NFL weekend. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game. Thursday Night Football. It's on Prime. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
You need some pom-poms in here, man. Let's go.
This Saturday, the CW is your new home for college football.
Hey, ACC fans, we're coming to the CW.
All your favorite teams.
Go Eagles.
Go Tigers.
Go Blue Devils.
All your favorite players.
I'm just excited to play football again with my guys. It's a totally different energy this year. It's so much fun.
All ready to make history.
We're excited to get to work.
13 unforgettable games.
Are you ready?
And it all kicks off Saturday.
Put the pads on and get after it.
Catch ACC football live Saturday on the CW.
You guys have been around the block in the fantasy football industry. And so for week 1, I feel like this is kind of like we know what's going to happen. We know that people are going to overreact, and we know that our timelines are going to fill up. So Jason, you've been doing this the longest. Is there any principles before we get into our big, week 1 overreactions and talking points? Is there any principles you want to give people of just like, hey, stay water, don't overreact? Because I think most people, that's like what they want to do is they just want to make a quick decision.
Well, it's obviously very nuanced, right? Because you have two sides of the coin that are really they're as far as the east from the west, in the sense that week 1 performances show you special things. We talk about Puka Nacua and that he looks like he could be legit, and you either choose to jump on it or you don't. And so you want to be aggressive with week 1 storylines. You want to not wait around and be proven after week 5 when you can no longer participate. But when you overreact, when you're wrong, when you reach, Puka is no guarantee as an example. And we have so much history of a week 1 dud or a week 1 stud completely going the other direction for the rest of the season, the rest of their careers. Sammy Watkins was always a week 1 super darling, and then, just wasn't really real most of the seasons he played football. So I think you just have to take it case by case. You need to, when you're excited about something, you need to try to play devil's advocate, right? So like Puka Nacua, what could go wrong? Well, Cooper Kupp comes back. He's relegated to the wide receiver 3 position, maybe the wide receiver 4, maybe Tutu Atwell is the wide receiver 3. And then you just have to ask yourself how realistic that is. How realistic is it that Van Jefferson and Tutu Atwell, guys who are multiple years into their career and have never been able to establish anything significant, that those guys can keep someone talented off the field? I think it's unrealistic. So you take it case by case, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to look at 6 big storylines and see if this is something we need to react to quickly, or are people overreacting to, and we need to have caution.
Yeah, one name that came up when you were talking, Jason, that I thought of, this is going to make people laugh, Kenny Golladay, right? Now, you laugh now because of what he is now, but there was a time in Dynasty where he came out of nowhere in week 1 as a rookie, 4 catches, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns, bursts onto the scene. Of course, now he's nothing and has no value and is not even in the league. But there was a time where he was valued as a top 20 dynasty wide receiver. So that's just another example of if you kind of waited, you missed the value peak of him. And I'm not saying Puka is going to have the same career path. I certainly hope that is not the case of Kenny Golladay. But that's an example of hey, if you didn't jump on that, you might have missed an opportunity. He was on waiver wires. He was a 4th round rookie pick, right? That sort of example. Those things definitely happen. So like Jason said, you don't want to ignore everything, but you want to react appropriately.
Yeah, there's a blend between underreacting and just being passive and just watching. That's what we don't want as a manager.
Right, yes.
But we want to be proactive, and the worst case scenario is you start some trade offers and then it doesn't amount to anything and you don't have to move on, but at least you're being proactive about the conversation about a player rather than just standing pat. I'm actually trying to take offers for Puka just to see what people will do. Because I don't know, that's the best part about Dynasty is people value players all over the map. If someone's willing to give a first, we'll talk, but it kind of depends on how desperate people are, what they saw. If they watch that game, they're like, holy crap, this guy is just open all the time, 15 targets. So be proactive rather than just being passive. But let's talk about these overreactions.
I'm not going to do what you all think I'm going to do, which is just flip out.
All right, we're going to give 6 storylines, and I'm going to let Betz start first because this is the biggest story in sports with the Jets and the Jets outlook. we talked about it a little bit of just how do you react with Zach Wilson, but let's talk about Garrett Wilson because it is dicey. I talked to a couple Garrett Wilson managers this morning of just, here's my expectation 24 hours ago, and then here's how I feel now, which is just completely drastic. So talk to me about the Jets.
Yeah, this is such a bummer. Like, I feel bad for Jets fans. I feel bad for NFL fans. Like, obviously Aaron Rodgers, the human being, but tearing the Achilles, when you have Garrett Wilson on your dynasty roster, you take him in redraft leagues, you think you have a potential top 3 fantasy wide receiver in the range of outcomes. That's gone, right? It's just gone in a matter of literally one play. With Zach Wilson, it's just not going to happen. Now, they're kicking the can on veterans. We don't know who it is as of this recording, but like, if you watched the interview with Robert Saleh last night, which why would you interview Robert Saleh right after the injury? But they did, and the first thing he said about it was, "Well, we've got a great defense." He didn't say anything about Zach Wilson. He said, "We've got a great defense." They're going to be insanely conservative, I think, as long as Zach Wilson is the starter. Which, how can you blame them, right? Because you've got Dalvin, you've got Brees, who we'll talk about him. He looked incredible, and you do have an elite defense. And just to put some numbers to it, they were by far dead last in pass rate over expectation last night, and they were trailing most of the game. So, I mean, Garrett Wilson's touchdown grab, boys, was out of this world. He is that level of player, but the throw itself from Zach Wilson was horrible. It was not in a good spot for Garrett Wilson. He saved it on that catch, but the volume is a big time concern. Last season when Garrett Wilson played with anyone not named Zach Wilson, he was averaging 17 fantasy points per game. With Zach Wilson, 8.6. So I don't know. Like, if Garrett Wilson finishes as like a mid-range wide receiver 2 at this point, you're going to be super disappointed. But I feel like that's kind of the expectation now from a redraft league. Now, this is Dynasty, so I don't want everyone to panic because Garrett Wilson has everything we look for from the age, the profile, second-year wide receiver, those things. It's just that if you were a contender and you had Garrett Wilson, like, you don't feel as great about your chances this year, I think, based off of this Aaron Rodgers injury.
I don't think that you can trade him away right now because you're going to get 75, 80 cents on the dollar from anybody. So it just in terms of emotional reactions, don't hit the panic button. We had a instance last year where in week 1, we were like, oh no, what are we going to do with CeeDee Lamb when Dak Prescott's out? And that was a short-term injury. But CeeDee was fine. I think it just comes down to who earns targets. And are they going to be in game scripts where they have to throw more? That's the hardest thing I have. I just have to look at this team and say, this team is built on defense. And we saw that it could beat the Bills somehow, some way on just their defense and defense alone. So volume, I don't know, like 7 targets a game feels right. But the dreams of 150 targets and 150 good targets is something that you just kind of have to throw aside. So Jason, are you trying to go after Garrett Wilson at all? Like, knowing that the manager's probably like a little shaken?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind going after him and seeing if you can get him in a dynasty league, especially if you're a team that is not necessarily looking to compete this year and maybe Garrett Wilson is on more of a championship roster. That's where I'm looking at it more, because you're not going to get him 50 cents on the dollar. He's Garrett Wilson. Dynasty managers are smart enough to realize, like, look, he's one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. And, if I've got to ride out this season with 75% of him, whatever, he's still going to be a valuable fantasy asset, even if he's not a top 5 wide receiver. And then in the future, should be super bright ahead without Zach Wilson. So I don't think you're going to get him super cheap, but it's always worth kicking the tires just to ask, just to see if you can, can you go trade? What would you trade? Would you trade 2 firsts for him?
I would comfortably because he's that guy, right?
So,
and in Dynasty leagues,
go offer that.
You don't get these opportunities very often to acquire a superstar. There is a small window right here, and I think you have to pounce, especially if you're not a contender this year. I think now's the time.
Would you rather have Garrett Wilson or Jalen Waddle in Dynasty right now? Because before the season, I would have easily said Garrett Wilson.
I think I would.
That is really, really
I think
tough.
I would still take Wilson.
Yeah, I lean that way as well. I have Waddle in our main Dynasty league, and I'm really thinking, like, who would I rather have? And the truth is that Tyreek Hill's going to be great this year, but Tyreek Hill's going to be great next year. And I am very afraid that Tyreek Hill's going to be really great the year after that. Like, at his age, most of the time I would be talking about, Jalen Waddle, he's going to be the one. He's going to step in, the way that Julio Jones did when Roddy White was the dude. And eventually Roddy White goes away and Julio becomes Julio. I'm waiting for that to happen for Jalen Waddle. I think that's going to happen like 4 years from now because Tyreek Hill is going to age great. When speed is your weapon, we've seen this with some, cornerbacks that play into their like to 40 because they're just so darn fast. And so I don't think Tyreek's going to finish out his contract, which I think is 3 more years, and then he'll retire, do other things. He'll be great the whole time he's playing. So I will take Garrett Wilson, who is the one for their team.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Before we move on from the Jets, we got to talk Breece Hall, boys, because goodness. The thing is, he's only going to get more explosive over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, which is kind of scary to think about. The numbers, right, from Dalvin Cook to Breece Hall last night were truly laughable when you look at the efficiency, the explosiveness, and if you just watch the game, like I've been kind of on record saying I think Dalvin's somewhat close to done, like he's hitting that age cliff that we get a little worried about. Breece Hall entering year 2 is on the ascension to being one of the best running backs in the league, especially given the landscape, right? Of like the Saquons of the world are slowly getting to the point where like the end is coming. It's closer than it was to the beginning. These guys entering year 2 usually are very good bets. I know Breece Hall's coming off that ACL, but he showed everything that you're looking for to say like he's probably going to return to form and maybe then some. And just to put the numbers to it, which is very funny, 13.4 yards per touch for Breece Hall, 3.7 for Dalvin Cook. Now that probably won't hold, but the Jets have no choice but to ride this running back tandem, these two guys. So, man, if you held Breece Hall through the injury or you traded for him somewhat cheap this offseason, I think you've got to be feeling incredible right now.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm feeling incredible. Thank you. 4 hours after that game, I did have to call a doctor, if you know what I'm saying. But let me tell you, Breece Hall's got me going. I love that dude. And, man, you saw it on that big 83-yard run that wasn't a touchdown. He doesn't have a gas tank yet. He hasn't been able to stay in football shape. So I can't imagine towards the end of the year when he's in great shape what he's going to be doing every single week when they are relying on the defense and run game, and it's going to be Breece, baby. Could you imagine, like if your main dynasty league, like your primary dynasty league, if you had like Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall and Travis Etienne, on like the same roster, how would you feel? Guys, how would you feel if that was your team instead of it being my team?
Jason, you are just sniffing your farts on the air.
They smell so good.
Jason, you make a 4-hour joke and then a sniffing your farts.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why people listen.
I know. I'd expect nothing less. I'm going to let you go next. You're going to talk to us about Jordan Love and the Packers who put up 38 points on the Bears.
Yeah, so this is another one of those big storylines where you've got to pounce or throw caution on it, because one of the biggest questions coming into this year from a fantasy perspective, from an NFL perspective, but certainly, without a doubt, from a dynasty perspective, is what is Jordan Love capable of? Talk about a young group of wide receivers here. You have a trifecta of really great young options, and then they add Luke Musgrave at tight end. So you've got Christian Watson, you've got Romeo Doubs there, and you've got Jalen Reed, 3 first and second year wide receivers, and they can only be as good as the quarterback plays. Week 1 of Jordan Love becoming the full-time starter with training camp and everything else, he was awesome. 15 to 27, 245 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He ran the offense well. The running game was working. Everything seemed to be going well. And if the future for the Packers is what the past is for the Packers, which means just nothing but quarterback hit after quarterback hit, and they've done it again, and Jordan Love is great, then you have to believe that your long-term outlook for Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed are sky's the limit. You also need to be pretty bullish on Luke Musgrave. And so I think that there will be some people overreacting to this performance. This is one where I personally will pump the brakes on. I will have caution with. You had Aaron Jones in this game decimating the Chicago Bears defense, really opening things up. Aaron Jones is not going to be a long-term solution for this team. And honestly, A.J. Dillon's, I feel like he's just getting worse. He does not look good. He hasn't looked good in 2 years.
1.9
He's a slow,
yards per carry.
Yeah.
Week 1.
Oh, was it really that bad?
1.9-esque.
I mean, he's not that great. He's a big, strong human being. He's not a good running back for the NFL. So if you don't have Aaron Jones long term, there's question marks, about pinning your ears back and being able to go after Jordan Love. But the real issue here is the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears looked completely unready for that game. They looked like they were a team that has been living off of off-season hype since the draft and their trades and you're getting DJ Moore and just the excitement that I know is in the city of Chicago. I feel like that team just came in. You want to talk about smelling your own farts. They came in just believing that they've achieved something.
They don't call it the Windy City for nothing, boys. Am I right?
Yeah, well done. I think they came in just really thinking that their team was ready to click automatically, and they got punched in the mouth. I don't think their defense is very good. It was obviously not good last year, and I am not going to overreact and sit there and think that Jordan Love is a future superstar. I won't be pouncing on Love. I won't be pouncing on Christian Watson, who I do believe is good. I won't be pouncing on Romeo Doubs with his 2 touchdowns. I will take a wait-and-see approach here because I credit the Chicago Bears with 60%. I'm not giving them all the credit. I mean, the Green Bay Packers deserve credit for the performance they did, but I still think the majority of credit goes to the Chicago Bears, and I will. I don't want you, our listeners, to overreact from what you saw in Green Bay, where everything worked.
I could not agree more, and I love the way that you brought it up in a very Jason Moore way. Like, I'm giving credit to the Bears for being bad to show Jordan Love. He was pressured on 6 dropbacks. Like, he didn't have to do much. And then, yes, the 3 touchdowns look good. The box score looks good. But on play action, he was actually one of the worst players in week 1. So that's what I care more about is, like, if they get the running game going, then you would think that they would be good on play action. That's something Jordan Love didn't do great. I still think they win this division, which they had the worst odds, which is wild for a long time. So I think they could still win the division. But if people are overreacting and saying Jordan Love's going to be a QB1 for my fantasy team, like, I think you're happy if you held on in a super flex league as a QB2. I think that can work. But I think if you're hoping for anything more than top 12 to 15, I think that's a lot. So I've seen a lot of offers in the first day, like, oh, could I trade Jordan Love for, I don't know, Dak or Daniel Jones? Like, that's the tier, and I'd still rather have those other players. That's just me. I don't know, Betz, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of bought into Jordan Love from the preseason, which, some people laugh at the preseason because of what it is, but like when you see flashes, like it is a time to pounce before things change. And the trade specifically in a Superflex league, I think I gave up, it was a 2025 first for Jordan Love and a third or something like that on top. As a QB2, I have Kyler, needed a guy, and I was like, you know what, this makes sense. So I'm happy. Like, I'm happy he came out and succeeded in week 1. But like you said, I want to see more before I really, truly think that was like a home run trade. I'm happy with QB2 numbers if he can give you that in a Superflex league. But the rushing upside certainly isn't there. We know how important that is. And along the same lines, like, he did do this without Christian Watson. So if Watson comes back, is healthy rest of season, which is a big if, which, by the way, I feel like I ruined that last week when I said he was going to the moon, is a big thing for Jordan Love's value, obviously. So I'm happy with the performance in week 1, but like you guys said, we don't want to overreact.
I don't want to overreact to this next one. It's Tee Higgins and his contract situation, because we had some news that came out earlier this week from Kelsey Conway. She covers the Bengals. She used to cover the Falcons. But she said that Tee Higgins is not believed to be in the Bengals' future plans. The two sides never got close. And then we see Joe Burrow sign his record-setting extension, $275 million. And then we see Tee Higgins come out and see, and I use this in air quotes, 8 targets. Because if you guys watched it, I posted the film of it. Would you have called those 8 targets that Tee Higgins saw like targets at all?
Oh my gosh, you posted it. You posted it and I watched it. I watched it like 3 times. And I counted how many were catchable. There were 2 that were catchable, and that is being so full of grace. I mean, those 2, I think, were not good, but they were catchable. They deserve to be targets. The other 6 were not targets to Tee Higgins in any way, shape, or form.
There was a couple of those where the cameraman is like way off, like he's like confused because I'm watching the film and I'm trying to splice it together. I'm like, I don't think the cameraman knows that it was supposed to go to Tee Higgins because it's just way off. So 8 targets in air quotes and he goose-egged. So a lot of people are like, okay, well, the team doesn't want him. He didn't do anything. They were really bad and you can just write him off. So do not overreact. This is my message about Tee Higgins. He's still only 24 years old. He's in the final year of his rookie contract. And yes, we do not know if he's going to be on the Bengals. And I would say based on the extension and based on what Jamar Chase is going to get, Justin Jefferson resetting the market, like those are the guys that are going to get paid. I think that Tee Higgins is up there as either the best or the second best wide receiver in next year's free agent market. Let me read these names to you guys and you tell me where he lands. Calvin Ridley, who we'll talk about later, who is going to be 29, Michael Pittman Jr., Gabe the Babe Davis, Darnell Mooney, Marquise Hollywood Brown, and then I just threw in there Chase Claypool just so we can laugh. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely the number 1 wide receiver. Even if you think that Calvin Ridley, which is the only wide receiver in the caliber of tier of player as Higgins is, Calvin Ridley's not going anywhere. He's a Jaguar. He's not going to hit the free agent market. He'll be franchised or he'll be given an extension. They've, I'm not worried about him leaving at all. So Tee Higgins, it seems like he is a foregone conclusion to be gone. They don't really have the money for him. They never really negotiated this offseason, and I think they're going to build around Jamar Chase and have to figure out a second wide receiver. So Tee Higgins will be a free agent going to a different team.
Yeah, and honestly, guys, that's okay. Like, it's not like, okay, he gets a huge boost because he's out from Chase. Chase actually helped him in terms of a lot of these games, like open up coverage. So I don't think it's like a negative. I also wouldn't call it just positive. I would just say, like, what do you believe about Tee Higgins as a player? And as a player who's 24, going 25, if you just take out those 8 targets you just saw, whatever they were, and you looked at the 366 other targets he's seen in his career, you would say, this guy's good. I wouldn't put him in the great category, but I think he is what an NFL team wants. A player that profiles as a 1, that can get downfield and can have monster games. So he's going to get a big contract, and he would be a player that if you have him, do not panic. And I was trying to get some value, so I want to gauge from you guys. Would you rather have Tee Higgins or Brandon Ayuk in a Dynasty League? They came in the league the same year.
I'm frozen with this question, truthfully.
Nice.
Yeah, that's super close. I think I see more like alpha capability from Brandon Ayuk than I do Tee Higgins. Not that Tee Higgins isn't good, but like I think Brandon Ayuk could turn into a true superstar. Week 1, boys, he looked incredible.
Brandon Ayuk is so hard.
Yeah, I lean more the Tee Higgins side. Brandon Ayuk is what, 25? How old is Tee Higgins?
24.6.
Haha, so super younger. I both of these guys are good, but Ayuk is in a role where he's the wide receiver 2 for his team. I don't know if he does leave the team and move on, that he will get the contract that Tee Higgins is going to get. Someone's going to give Tee Higgins like an alpha tier contract, and that doesn't guarantee success. Kenny Golladay. But I think that Tee Higgins is still in his prime. He'll be given a contract that says he gets 150 targets. He's coming in to be a 1. That's my guess. So I'll lean on the Tee Higgins side.
Yeah, and I know people won't like this name comp, but there was a time when Allen Robinson was signed by the Bears. He was still young. He was someone that can earn targets. Wasn't quite the separator that we wanted. That's kind of Tee Higgins. And had some monster years with the Bears where he was getting, 140, 150 targets. So that's kind of like what you're looking at, like a contract-wise. So keep that in mind. Don't just write him off, guys. He's still good. Let's take one more break, and we'll be right back.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. Watch the NFL's biggest stars play in the most exciting matchups all season long. With Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, and the best broadcast team delivering all you need to know to kick off your NFL weekend. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game. Thursday Night Football. It's on Prime. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
You need some pom-poms in here, man. Let's go.
This Saturday, the CW is your new home for college football.
Hey, ACC fans, we're coming to the CW.
All your favorite teams.
Go Eagles.
Go Tigers.
Go Blue Devils.
All your favorite players.
I'm just excited to play football again with my guys. It's a totally different energy this year. It's so much fun.
All ready to make history.
We're excited to get to work.
13 unforgettable games.
Are you ready?
And it all kicks off Saturday.
Put the pads on and get after it.
Catch ACC football live Saturday on the CW.
Betz, we're going to get to talk about one more player here from you that caught your attention from the Dynasty Outlook, and it's all over the map. Like, I think you could actually form a lot of opinions from week one. And last year, if you would have done this with Justin Fields week one, you could have logged out and missed out on the rest of the season. So talk to me about Fields.
Yeah, this is, I think, a completely different conversation because we know in fantasy, if he runs, he will be good. But I'm going to start this conversation with saying Chicago has its own 2024 first, Carolina's 2024 first, and the most available cap space entering this offseason after the season is over. So I want to ask you guys, what is the percentage chance that you think Justin Fields is the week one starter next year for Chicago?
Great question.
I put it...
If you just had to ballpark it.
If I had to ballpark it, I would put it at 90%.
I'm a little lower.
That's way higher than I would say.
I'd probably put it at 65, 70%.
The clock's ticking. I mean, I know it's 1 week, but he was not good as a passer. And that is not a small sample. Like, that was all of last year was the talk about Justin Fields. It's like, well, he's going to run. It's so good for fantasy, but like from a real life NFL perspective, it's not good. Week one, he was 29th in PFF passing grade. His ADOT was 3.6 yards. That was 31st. Disgusting. He was under pressure on over half of his dropbacks. And last year, like, Chicago was dead last in sack rate allowed. Now, part of that is the offensive line. Part of that is Justin Fields. And so there's a ton that has to change soon for Justin Fields. And if it doesn't, the NFL moves on very quickly. Like, they aren't winning games with Justin Fields. They didn't win last year. They clearly are off to a bad start this year. So all I'm saying is, if you think you have a starter locked in for next year, I do not think that is a guarantee. If the writing is on the wall that they keep losing, I am probably looking to move on in Dynasty from Justin Fields.
Yeah, I guess it's really just a matter of, do you think he's going to get his act together this year? And even if he's not a phenomenal passer, what matters is, does he score points? You know, last year in a stretch of losses, they scored 33 points, 29 points, 32 points, 30 points. If you're scoring 29, 30-plus points a game, I don't care if you're a bad passer. The only thing that matters for winning on an NFL field is, did you score points? Those weren't fantasy points. Those were the points that the Chicago Bears scored, regardless of how many points they gave up. So if he can put up points, you know, on an NFL field, which I think he will do this season, he should be their starter next year.
The biggest issue is that he had 2 designed runs in week one. Like, What are they doing? What is Luke Getsy doing? Because that's when they had the switch last year. It was week 6, and all of a sudden they started doing over 5 a game, and he went to the moon. So here's what I do think. In Dynasty, Justin Fields will be a starting quarterback in the NFL next year. And I said it was pretty high that it's the Bears. If it's not the Bears, this dude's going to be a starting quarterback for somebody because I think he has the tools to do it.
Yeah, the only way that he's not the starting quarterback, barring injury for the Bears, would be that the Bears get a really, really good draft pick, believe in another quarterback more, and then they're going to trade Fields to a quarterback-needy team. So you're right. He'll be a starter.
So his sack rate is just legendary, by the way. Just like what he's done in his career, he's good at that. He's good at taking sacks and holding onto the ball, which for fantasy, we don't care. We don't care at all. We know that he's going to run. I like the point you brought up, though, Betz, of like their ammo and what they have tells us that it's possible. I just put it at less likely based on, I think the team as a whole, they were losing last year, but they had an identity, right? Like, I know I'm going narrative based, but like they had an identity that Justin Fields was fun, that the team embraced him, and that they were actually moving forward in the right direction. So it's hard for me to say it after week 1. When we did our Superflex show, when we went through our rankings, he was the one at the very end of the group. Like when you get to like Trevor Lawrence and Fields, where I'm like, I'm not ready to crown Fields just in the elites yet. So that's kind of like, I feel like he's just exactly where he was before, where I'm not scared off, but I kind of thought like, okay, there's going to be some bumps. So any thoughts about their pass catchers? Because it was Mooney in week 1, and then DJ Moore saw like a 4% target share.
Well, that was confusing as heck. I don't understand why that happened. But the other thing is with that ADOT I mentioned, like after the game, Justin Fields said that was the game plan, was these kind of short, horizontal passes.
Why?
Which in the preseason, that's what we saw. We literally saw DJ Moore take a screen pass to the house. Granted, that was a terribly thrown ball. And we also saw Khalil Herbert take a screen pass to the house. So I don't know if they saw that and were like, oh, that's what worked. Let's just keep doing that. But yeah, I mean, Justin Fields was a good downfield passer at Ohio State. So they need to open it up. They've got DJ Moore. Yeah, I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, you can't really repeat yak stuff like that week in, week out. And if it doesn't work, then you're just completely screwed. So Jason, you're going to hit us next. And I just want to ask you a question. Like in Arizona, I know that they sometimes refer to themselves as the Dirty Birds, but do you know that most people think of the Falcons as the Dirty Birds?
Yeah, nobody, I don't think the Cardinals think of themselves as the Dirty Birds. Ron Wolfley, the commentator for the Cardinals.
A deep voice.
The Dirty Birds. He will call them that.
Okay.
But I don't think we go around. I've never heard people, other than doing an impression of Ron Wolfley, call us the Dirty Birds.
Because the Falcons are the Dirty Birds.
You bring up the Falcons because that is the storyline I want to talk about from this week, but also from last year, from Arthur Smith, from everything we know. The Falcons rushing and receiving conundrum. Will it stick? Will it be historically insane? Right now, the Falcons, just like last year, they want to run the ball. They're good at running the ball. As a team, they were basically the best rushing team last season with Cordero Patterson, Tyler Algier, and Caleb Huntley, and whoever else got the ball back there. The scheme is really, really good for running the ball. And that hurt Kyle Pitts last season. Drake London wasn't amazing. You just didn't throw the ball that much. So you come out this year after drafting Bijan Robinson, obviously running back, but a pass-catching running back. Kyle, I know you were at some Falcons, camp. You were doing boots on the ground camp reporting, and I remember you talking about them spreading it out, going 5 wide.
In the red zone.
In the red zone, empty backfield. Just like what kind of an offense are we going to see this year? And here's what we saw week 1. We saw them hand the ball off a lot, and then we saw after that they would hand the ball off to a running back. And then sometimes they would do like a handoff, maybe a draw, maybe like a sweep. Then they would do it like a toss, and always to the running back, and then to that running back. And then they would go to pass. And I don't know if you're aware, but over 50% of their targets went to the running backs. Obviously, that is not going to stick. I mean, when you say over 50% of the targets, you're like, percentages with the Falcons offense, they don't make sense. Anyways, Bijan had a 34% target share. He only had 6 targets. They just didn't throw the ball a lot. And so I think that is the question that we need to react to is, can this possibly keep happening where the passing game is absolutely, unequivocally irrelevant and the running game is super solid and great? Now, the reason I wonder about cautioning us is because this was Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers they played. This was a team that, that looked like they're going to be a top 10 draft pick. They were not good on offense. They were worse on defense. So the Atlanta Falcons, they get up by 14 points, and, of course, you can run the ball. My belief is not just based on this single game. My belief is based on Arthur Smith's history, this game, last season, that this is going to be exactly what you get. I think that there will be certain games where they will have to throw the ball more. This will be the more extreme example in week 1. But I do believe that they're going to succeed with this method. It's going to suck for fantasy when it comes to the passing game. I don't think you want to invest in any of the passing options. I'm all about the running backs. So you want to give me Bijan, you want to give me Tyler Algier, I'm happy to take him, obviously. But I feel like Drake London is red alert. Red alert for a super talented top 10 pick who has done nothing but look great. And Kyle Pitts, who's super athletic, and I don't blame him for any of his woes on not being able to catch on catchable targets. But, this is a team where if you are relying on Drake London or Kyle Pitts, I think you're screwed. I think you are not going to have a good run there. And neither of these players – now, Kyle Pitts, both of these guys are so young that on a long-term dynasty perspective, especially Kyle Pitts will have a dominant future. I really believe that. The way they use Kyle Pitts is insane to me. It's absolutely mind-blowing that they basically it's funny. We want them to have valuable targets downfield, run real wide receiver routes, and they do that with Kyle Pitts. But they only do that with Kyle Pitts. Get the man the ball in some designed, just leak him out a little bit from the line of scrimmage. Give him an easy catch. I feel like everything he gets is 25 yards down the field, and it's a 40-60 ball. It's not fair to the man. On his second contract, wherever he goes, he'll be great. But right now, for the next couple of years, I believe that it's going to be more of the same. And Arthur Smith does not care. He succeeds with it. He's just too good at running the ball. They're going to keep doing it, and I'm out on the Falcons passing game.
Pitts ran 20 routes this past week, and luckily they didn't ask him to pass block. They just got Jonnu Smith to do that. But I rewatched the game, and it was as bad as you could think. I mean, London's one target he dropped, so that wasn't good. And Bijan, they were manufacturing touches for him, so a couple of those targets were just little flicks, barely across the line of scrimmage. The hardest part is their schedule coming up. I know we're looking short term here. Is Green Bay, at Detroit, Jacksonville. I think they're not going to be able to play the same way that they did against the Panthers, where they were really bad. I mean, they didn't turn the ball over, but on third down they were bad. Ritter looked pretty scared, for the most part. It didn't look good. So it's weird when you kind of roll back where London and Pitts were taken in drafts, because remember Pitts, they took him the pick before Jamar Chase. No big deal. And then London, they took him 2 picks before Garrett Wilson. So we have completely different dynasty outlooks on players that went right after them because of their situation. And I'm with Jason. It's one of those things with London where I don't know if you could trade him right now because people are not going to respect it. But at the end of the day, you can't start him with confidence. So would you rather have, Jason, Drake London or Christian Watson in Dynasty?
I would rather have Christian Watson. I think Christian Watson has a chance. Painful. I know. It kind of sucks. He's a little bit older. He's not as talented as a wide receiver as Drake London is. If you told me that those players were traded for one another in the NFL, oh my goodness, would I be in on Drake London. Drake London is a better player than Christian Watson, but sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes what matters is the situation you're in, the opportunity that you're going to get on the field, and Drake London's not going to get enough.
Yeah, it's
this and with so Bijan,
with Bijan,
the last 5 minutes was so sad.
Oh man, well, welcome to be a Falcons fan, where we can win and then everyone still hates us because, well, it's screwing over their fantasy lives. Let me give one more thought here. A former Falcon, Calvin Ridley, and talk about his value moving forward. He's 28.7 years old, and we've made fun of him for this, but he's technically on his rookie contract still.
That is so insane. It's so insane that he is finishing his rookie contract at the end of his career. Anyways, go on.
That's what I looked at. Hayden Hurst, who's super old, and he just finished his rookie contract the year before, and he's 30 now. Anyway, Falcons players, whatever. So with Calvin Ridley, he looked like an alpha in week 1, right? like 35% target share, over 30% of the first read targets, 50% of the team's end zone targets. Like, it was clear he's the dude. And Jason mentioned earlier, he's probably going to re-sign with Jacksonville. I don't know how long that contract will be, but what is his value right now? If you are a contender, you're happy, you're going to ride it out. But if you're in a rebuild and you have Calvin Ridley and you just like, hey, I have had him on my squad, sitting around, I'm not in a place to contend, what kind of price would you be willing to part with him for? Because I would want more than a first. And I think I would want something like, if you want to contend, like give me a first and another young player, or a first and, I don't know, I said a first and Jahan Dotson, and I would think about it. But I feel like Ridley's value is just so sky high despite his age right now that dynasty managers need to think about this before they just react too quickly.
I think the trade that you mentioned, the first and a young wide receiver like Jahan Dotson, you can pick another one if you want, but like that range probably feels correct to me at least, because I was hesitant to buy into Calvin Ridley this offseason, but training camp, everything that you heard was positive, and then came out and did that in week 1. Now, it was against Indy's like college level secondary, so let's just remember that. But like Trevor Lawrence, we want to bet on, right? And we like the system. I think it's here to stay for this season at least, probably next year as well. So yeah, you're right. I think if you are going to part with Calvin Ridley, I wouldn't just like look at this opportunity and say like, I got to get something right now. Like, I think you can capitalize and you can get something pretty legit in the form of a trade if you are not a contender.
Yeah. So final thought here, Jason, is he one of those players that's like, if you have him, you just got to ride this out?
Yeah, I think you ride it out. I mean, I would try to trade him because, like you said, if you could get Jahan Dotson and a 1, I would do that in a heartbeat. He's about to turn 29 years old. That's when you capitalize on those wide receivers. If you can get a first and a young stud for any great 29-plus-year-old wide receiver not named Tyreek Hill, I would pretty much do that. But assuming you can't get that, then yeah, you ride it out. Because like I said, I do think he's going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar next year. I think he's going to be great this year, great next year. And if you're, on a championship run, he's going to provide a lot of value. He was so clearly the first target. Watching how the reads progressed, Christian Kirk only played 60% of snaps, and it just seemed like Calvin Ridley's my dude. I'm looking at him. I'm going to force him the ball, and he's good enough. That was the question. It's like, well, is he good enough to be that dude? Yeah, he is. He was through camp, and week 1, he looked awesome.
Yeah, this week they play Kansas City at home, which should be one of the best games of the week.
Yes, please.
Yes, for DFS, for everything, it's going to be a fun game. That's going to do it for this episode of the Dynasty Podcast. If you want to stay in the Dynasty conversation, guys, our Discord is popping. The Dynasty channels, they don't go to sleep just because we're in season. So if you want to hop on that, you can go to our website, thefantasyfootballers.com, to be a part of that conversation. We hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.
CuriosityStream is the streaming service for people who want to know more. And now check out Curiosity's new series, Queens of Ancient Egypt. When pharaohs held the throne, their wives held the power.
We see her taking precedence over the pharaoh, an absolute mastermind.
All hail the queens.
This is unprecedented.
Watch Queens of Ancient Egypt now on CuriosityStream. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at CuriosityStream.com.